y'all, we have such great news. The 5 days of deals are coming the week of Thanksgiving.
Starting November 20th through the 24th, Hustle Humbly will be offering a different deal each day.
One deal per day. And on Friday, Black Friday, we're going to have our biggest deal, which is more than 40% off of one of our favorite courses.
It's going to be amazing. And you want to sign up early because if you sign up early, you will also get a freebie with any of your purchases that you make.
That's right. And it's not going to be something bad. It's going to be something good.
Such a good freebie.
You're going to want that.
So to get on that list, you need to go to hustlehumblypodcast.com/earlybird.
That's right. Be an early bird. Get the worm.
Early bird gets the worm.
That's right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
I'm like, let me tell you the next loan I'll be using when I buy a house.
But I would also like to mention that VA loans closed at a higher success rate than conventional loans did last year, by almost 10%.
Really? I thought this was going to be more boring.
That's an FHA guideline. Don't FHA my VA.
This is blowing my mind right now that there were no loan limits and no PMI.
Hi, y'all. Welcome to Hustle Humbly. It's Alyssa and Katie, and we are two top producing realtors in the Baton Rouge market.
We work for two different companies where we should be competitors, but we have chosen community over competition.
The goal of our podcast is to encourage you to find your own way in business.
So stop comparing yourself and start embracing your strengths.
Hi, Alyssa.
Hey, Katie.
It is episode 223, and today we are celebrating Veterans Day, talking about VA home loans.
Perfect timing.
I know, I can't wait. And we have guests, multiple. We were just saying it's the first time we've had two guests at the same time. So Samantha and Liz, I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself, tell us who you are, where you are, and what you do.
You go first. Okay. So my name is Liz Going. I'm a loan officer with Prime Lending. I think I'm supposed to disclose my NMLS number for...
Great, go for it.
Yeah, tell us. What's your number?
So it's 1818156, and my views here don't represent those of Prime Lending, its affiliates, and whatever other compliance I have to say.
Okay,
Wonderful.
perfect. Well, how long have you been there?
So I have been with Prime Lending for a little over a year and a half now, but I've actually been a loan officer for about 5 years. And I made the pivot about 2.5, 3 years ago to really focus my business on VA, because in New Hampshire, we're a very small state, but about 10% of our state is either active duty or veterans. So that's a really underserved population in our state. Very, very close-knit state as well. So I wanted to make that change to help veterans have a better home buying experience here in New Hampshire.
That's amazing. That's a lot of veterans in one place.
That is a lot of veterans in one place. Do y'all have we'll get into them. I guess, do you have a base there or multiple bases, or what's the story? Why are there so many?
So there's a National Guard base and an Army base in Manchester, as well as in Concord. There is also the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, so we get some people over there.
A lot of my clientele are recruiters, and they have different recruiter offices all over the state.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, Samantha, tell us about yourself.
So my name's Samantha Catterall. I am a real estate agent with the Legacy Group at Keller Williams. I was a veteran I am a veteran myself. I was in the Vermont Army National Guard, and I went into human services after that and didn't really feel I was doing my best. So I jumped into real estate, and I've only been doing this for 2.5 years. But I've been pretty successful, especially with the VA being about 50% of the business I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fascinating. And to hear from a younger agent that's getting right into it from that background and serving your clientele, you're serving the people that you were working with, which I think is, what they need the most.
Yes. Absolutely. Especially when it comes to the disabled veterans, the PTSD, there's a lot that goes into working with these clients that may have that significant PTSD. So knowing that they have someone they can, get support from is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I bet having someone that shared an experience or that can talk to them about that. How long were you in the Army National Guard?
So I was in for 6 years.
Okay. Did you...
I never deployed.
Okay. It's interesting, and I'll just throw it in there. My husband is a veteran. He was in the Army National Guard in Louisiana, but he was deployed to Afghanistan in 2002. So he's in a construction specialty. So he had to go and build the base, like after 9/11, that's when their unit was one of the first ones to go. Then he was activated again, actually, I think even longer than that time during Hurricane Katrina. So right before and all the way through, like they were basically occupying New Orleans whenever the residents couldn't be there for such a long time. So that was interesting. So I've seen it from the wife's standpoint. I wasn't with him when he was in Afghanistan, but I've been around long enough to know a little bit. So we love veterans. I love veterans. I'm married to a veteran. So I'm really excited to be talking about this with y'all. I do think they're underserved, and sometimes there are some challenges associated with a veteran getting a loan and trying to get a house. And maybe it's hard to get those loans approved and those offers approved. So we're definitely going to dive into that. Okay, so maybe can you start with the basics? Like, who is eligible for a VA loan?
Yeah. So, I guess I can take this one.
Yes.
So as long as someone has 90 plus days of either Title 10 orders or 30 days of Title 32, which is Title 32 is when your governor activates you. Title 10 is when the president activates you. So as long as somebody has that amount of time served, they're generally eligible. If somebody's been in the National Guard, usually it's 6 years that they have to be in the Guard, earning a specific number of retirement points, or if somebody was medically discharged, say somebody was deployed for their first time to, say, Iraq, and they were a paratrooper, right? And their first jump on their first deployment, something goes wrong with the parachute, it malfunctions, they break their legs, they're removed from service, they're medically discharged. They're actually eligible because they went to war and they obviously couldn't finish what they were trying to do, because of medical service connected reasons. And then also surviving spouses of veterans who, pay the ultimate sacrifice, or maybe one good example is, it's a sad example, but, the Agent Orange guys from Vietnam, they come back home and, they have these longstanding medical issues. And as long as we can document the link between their Agent Orange exposure leading to their unfortunate passing, that surviving spouse is also eligible for their home loan benefit. Just requires pre-authorization from the Department of Veterans Affairs.
So the surviving spouses, their spouse would have had to pass away while serving.
Serving or from a service-connected disability.
Okay.
So you think about those really heartbreaking stories, somebody comes back missing pieces or with carcinogenic exposure while they were deployed. And if somebody comes back, and they're totally healthy and then their spouse dies from like Alzheimer's, for example, obviously that's not really service connected. But, if it's again, like Agent Orange exposure, for example, and they pass away later on,
they're eligible. I have a strange question. I don't know what about suicide? I know that's such a big problem with veterans. Does that apply do you know?
It depends. So anytime a surviving spouse is applying for this kind of eligibility with the VA, they have to go through a prior authorization process. It's not something that we're able to pre-approve like that. There are some forms that have to be filed, and the VA has to dig into their medical records. Sometimes, I'm not going to say it's a definite no-go, but it's really going to depend case by case. Was there documented trips to the VA health center? Do you know what I mean? These sorts of things. It's really a decision that the VA is going to make.
Yeah.
It does seem like for the VA loan, there would be some specific underwriting, that it's not a checklist of approval anytime. It seems like you're always having to verify this information. I've had issues before where my clients had trouble getting the certificates that you mentioned. Are those hard to get, or they just have a portal?
So it's actually really easy to grab them. So it really all you need as a lender is you need access to the WebLGY hub, WebLG, whatever you want to call it. You need their social security number and you need the year of their birth. And about 80% of certificate of eligibilities are available instantly on their website through their portal.
Okay.
If it's not, there are some gaps where the VA just hasn't caught up with paperwork, in which case you need to grab a copy of their DD-214, or maybe they're a current reservist and they've served their time. Maybe we have to get a copy of their retirement point statement and submit that to the VA. But overall, 80% of the time, these things are readily available at the snap of a finger. There's really no excuse, in my opinion, for a lender to not pull that upfront
for the lender to do it for them. Okay, tell us what a DD 214 is for the listeners, and how, like, when do you get that? Like, who has that? When do they get that?
Yeah, so a DD 214 is basically the military equivalent of your college transcripts. The name of the form is just DD 214. It's the government. They love numbers and acronyms. But they need their member for copy, which includes their character of discharge, because we just have to know, we have to make sure that they weren't dishonorably discharged. So if you were dishonorably discharged from the military, chances are you're not going to be eligible.
Okay. Now, I want to hear some of the benefits to using a VA loan. And do you find that some veterans don't even know that they have this benefit? Is that common that people just aren't even aware? So what are the benefits to using one? And is that like a commonly used thing, or do we need to get that word out?
So I would say a lot of veterans maybe know that it exists, but they don't really know, the extent of it. I mean, I think, Sam, you can attest to the experience when you're being separated from service and the 2 days that you have to sit in class.
They don't tell you anything. So I know the biggest thing that other veterans say is, I need to go to the VA to get that. When you don't obviously have to go to the VA, you go to a lender who can specialize in VA loans.
But yeah, a lot of the times they don't know. They also maybe don't know some of the that you can use your VA benefit more than once. There's a lot of things that veterans don't know because the knowledge there's just so much to know when you're being separated from service that it's just something that gets glossed over quick. Like, oh, hang on, just so you guys know, you have a housing benefit. All right, we're going to move on to the VA Medical Center now.
Yeah, it's glossed over.
Yes. Okay. And the other benefit too is there's no PMI when you use a VA loan. So you're not paying that monthly PMI interest. And I actually just had a huge conversation with my broker. I'm known as the VA gal. So if anyone has any questions, they always call me or they ask my broker and my broker calls me. And he was saying that there's a deal happening right now between two agents in our office. And what happened was the listing agent said, oh, no, we would prefer it to be conventional over VA. Well, come to find out, because he was going to be conventional, he was going to be paying an additional $700 a month in his mortgage. So by using his VA loan, he didn't have that because he wasn't paying the PMI. And they were like, oh, just call that girl Sam. She knows all about this stuff. She can explain it.
Yeah. I mean, fair.
That's a question I have because the only thing, I think one of the biggest things I hear is like it offers them 100% financing.
Yes.
But you can put money down, right?
Absolutely. Yep, you absolutely can. 26% of veterans do actually make a down payment.
Wow.
Even though they don't have to. And that's a statistic from the Department of Veterans Affairs themselves. Also, a lot of the times VA loans have lower rates. I'm not going to say all the time because, as you guys know, interest rates are like a science. There's 32 things that go into one interest rate. But generally VA loans, it's a government insured loan. So, the interest rates are a little bit better. No down payment. If a veteran wants to, they can. If a veteran wants to make up an appraisal gap on a purchase, they certainly can. And then another thing too is that there's no loan limits. So up here where we're filming in New Hampshire is up in the Lakes region. And we have some absolutely beautiful $1 million homes up here on the lake and in the mountains and in the ski resorts. A veteran with full entitlement has no loan limit. So you could actually probably buy a $2 million lake house up here in New Hampshire as long as you can qualify for the payment for zero money down.
And no PMI.
And no PMI.
It just has to be your primary residence though, right?
Correct. Yep. Can't be a vacation home. Can't be a second home. It's got to be your primary.
I had no idea there were no loan limits.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody's all here stoked.
How do we not know this?
I'm like, let me tell you the next loan I'll be using when I buy a house.
Yeah, you can. Lucky.
I didn't even know there was this is blowing my mind right now that there were no loan limits and no PMI.
It seems like, though, especially like I have a client right now, and this is a question I have too. He's a veteran. They have a VA on their current home. They need to move and get a bigger home now that they are having children. He wants to use his VA. So you can only have one VA out at a time, correct?
Incorrect.
No.
Nope, incorrect. You could have multiple VA loans at a time. It's a common misconception that you can only do one at a time. What it all comes down to is entitlement and how much entitlement you have remaining. And how
What
much
does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So entitlement, this is going to be a tough one. So entitlement is basically it's the VA's guarantee of 25% of your loan amount. Okay. So that's the benefit that lenders get. And that's really, I guess, if we want to back up to what a VA loan is, it's basically just the Department of Veterans Affairs guaranteeing 25% of the loan amount to service members in the event that the lender writes the loan in a way that meets their criteria in their handbook, which is called the 26-7. So with that entitlement, like I said, your first house, no loan limit if you have full entitlement. If you have some entitlement remaining on your old house that you used, right, there's this thing called bonus entitlement, which is kind of cool. So there's some math calculations involved. I can send it to you guys if you want, a great calculator that I use to calculate that. It's technically the lender's job. You guys don't have to worry about it as real estate agents. Just know that there is bonus entitlement and that it's worth talking to the lender to ask if they can buy a second home with zero money down.
Can you give me like an example, just like a basics numbers one? Because I'm like, I don't think I get it.
Okay. So say that you bought a house and you bought it for $100,000. Okay. The VA guaranteed 25% of that $100,000 purchase. So you have used $25,000 of your VA entitlement. Okay. That's your basic entitlement. After that, you can go ahead and you can calculate the bonus, which is, I'm going to have to write this down and write a math equation for you because
Please do. I'm happy to wait for the math equation.
Yeah, well, let's see.
Pause for equation.
Yeah. Sam, do you want to take a conversation while I write down the math?
No, you do your thing.
Sam, tell us while Liz is doing the math for me, have you had clients use a second VA loan? Have you had any experience with that?
So they have used it a second time, but they don't have a home at that time with the VA loan. They're either, they sold it years ago and they're just renting and then they're going back and trying to use their loan again. That's really the only time that I've experienced it.
Right, because I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this contingency because they have a VA loan and the house they're going to be buying is going to be more expensive. So they want to still use their VA loan. But let's just say it doesn't work out. They have to sell this one to get rid of this one before they can buy. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, I know we'd have to be contingent, I suppose, but what if we closed and they knew that you had every intention of selling that house?
Like, is there is there some type of time frame where you're like, okay, as long as you get rid of or refi, or what if you were keeping the first house as an investment and you just were going to refi that after you buy the, I guess these are Liz questions.
Right. Would you have to refinance the first VA away before you could buy the second VA?
No, you can do a one-time, what's the word?
Refi?
Like a recast?
No, you can do a one-time reinstatement of your benefit. One time.
Oh, okay.
Where basically, you keep everything the way that it is. You restore your entitlement to 0%, back to full entitlement. You can do that one time.
Okay.
Entitlement sounds very important, and I've never heard of it.
Me neither. So I think, are you ready to give us the entitlement story, Liz?
Yes. All right. So
we're on the edge of our seats right now.
Okay. All right. So for example here, so if we live in New Hampshire, okay, where we live in New Hampshire, our max loan amount, our county loan limit here, which doesn't apply to VA, right? But it does apply to conventional. It's $726,200. If somebody's used 25% of or 25%, right, on that $100,000 house, they've got $25,000 that they've already used in outstanding entitlement. So that means that they have $156,550 left of remaining entitlement that they can use for the VA. And remember, that $156,000, that's only 25%.
25%
of your max loan amount.
Exactly. So if we multiply the $156,550 times 4, that lands us at a max purchase price with 0% down of $626,200.
So they have the $100,000 house. Now they can buy a $600,000 house and still
with no
have
money
both
down.
VA. Okay.
And that would exhaust all of their entitlement. So if they wanted to buy something that's less, they're just going to leave a little bit more on the table. Now, say they want to buy a house that's $700,000, right? 626 isn't enough for me. And they want to buy a $700,000 price. The cool thing is that the veteran only needs to bring in 25% of that difference between 626 and 700. And that's their down payment. So that's pretty tiny, right? So that's like what, 1.5%, 2%? Mental math.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm with you. What I have just now learned is that you need a VA intelligent lender.
Yes, for sure. That can double check these things and understands entitlement and bonus entitlement. So what if does the VA have a problem with the fact that they're buying a bigger home? They have a VA loan on their other home that they're not going to be living in anymore?
No, as long as the veteran has occupied that as their primary residence, that's fine. For example, I have a client who owns a house up in New York, up in Plattsburgh, New York, and he rents it out to other Army guys. And he used to live there when he served. Now he lives in New Hampshire. He bought a house. Used his VA benefit again, so he's got 2 VA loans right at the same time. He's got one that he rents out to his Army buddies, and he has his primary residence here in New Hampshire with his family.
Fascinating.
I am fascinated.
Fascinating.
Wow. Okay. Wow. All right. So that's very interesting and kind of goes right into what are the common agent or buyer misconceptions about VA loans? We've already debunked that you can only have one at a time. Are there other misconceptions that agents have or that even like veteran buyers have?
Oh, yes. All the time. Usually when I'm working with a VA buyer, the first thing I like to ask the other agent when I find a property they want to look at is, will this work for a VA loan? There are other programs with VA loans, such as the VA rehab. Liz can talk into, we can do a waiver. So the biggest things that I hear are, one time I heard it has 2-prong outlets. It's never going to work for VA. I was like, oh, that's quite interesting. Let me call Liz. Let me see what she has to say about that. There's nothing in the VA handbook that says that would not work. The other thing is we up here, I don't know if you have a lot of private water where you guys are from.
Like a well?
Well, yeah, well. So dug wells are a huge thing in our area, and that's what, some agents have told us, oh, a dug well won't work because of the dug well.
Yes. Okay. Interesting. So most misconceptions then are based on the actual construction or type or things involved in the house. Okay. This is very interesting.
Yeah. Is it just, say it has a private well as the water source? Do you have to get a certificate or anything for that?
Yeah, basic. So first of all, dug wells aren't a problem. So I just like to get that on the record. Dug wells are not a problem. Neither are artesian wells, shared wells, all that kind of stuff. They're fine. In regards to water, private water sources, all you need on a VA loan is a water test. And they don't necessarily specify which water test either in the handbook. Just that a water test has to be done. What I normally recommend is the one for the 5 primary EPA pollutants, lead, nitrates, nitrites, E. coli, and coliform, because who wants that in their water?
I probably want that no matter what loan I had.
Right, exactly. That's pretty much it for a well, as long as it's common for the area and doesn't affect marketability of the property. That's the big thing that VA is looking out for. They want to make sure that the veteran's not buying a house that they're going to have problems offloading later.
I like that philosophy, though. That's
Yeah.
my personal philosophy with buyers.
Yes.
I want everyone to be able to resell it later.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting.
Sound and sanitary.
Yep.
Okay, safe, sound, and sanitary. This is important,
I feel like that should be the standard for all.
right? Safe, sound, and sanitary. If you're going to live in it, it should be those things. So tell me about this handbook that you keep referring to. Who has access to the handbook? How long is it? Like, do you get trained in it? Like, tell me more about the handbook.
Okay, so do I get trained in it as a lender? No. Believe it or not, lenders, we have to take a SAFE exam if you're a broker or continuing education. But a lot of that education that goes into becoming a loan officer isn't necessarily on how to do a particular loan or on particular loan guidelines. A lot of it is more on government regulations and knowing those sorts of regulations, Reg B, Reg Z, ECOA, FICRA, all that kind of stuff. the type of education that you can get as a loan officer, you can choose to educate yourself on a specific mortgage type, right? That's what I've done. I've chosen with my business to gear myself more towards knowing the 26-7 in and out. Mm-hmm. Every lender, every person, everybody has access to it if you have access to the internet. You can literally just Google VA 26-7, and that's going to pull up the handbook. And it's, believe it or not, it's one of the easier handbooks, in my opinion, to read. Mm-hmm. VA loans are really fun because the guidelines are written pretty vague. Reason for that is the service member's life is pretty vague between PCSing and getting, separating from service. There's a lot of things that happen in a service member's life that doesn't necessarily happen to civilians like me. So the handbook is written with that in mind, but anybody can look that up. If you're looking or have specific questions about property eligibility or property standards, Chapter 12 of the VA 26-7 is going to tell you in a beautifully written way that actually makes sense, what is acceptable and what is not. And that chapter covers everything from mobile homes to lava flow areas to houses that are on posts and piers, and wells.
Wells, yeah.
Hey friend, we just wanted to pop over and remind you of all of the freebies that we have on our website at hustlehumblypodcast.com/resources.
There are quite a few on there. They work for buyers and sellers, for your business, all different things you might need, and all for free. Mm-hmm. Alyssa, which one is your favorite?
My favorite freebie is the due diligence checklist.
Oh, that's a good one and so impactful for your buyers.
Mm-hmm. It's a great email template.
It's a really good one. My favorite is probably the staging checklist. I want my sellers to have those houses looking good.
Yes. So head over and see which ones you would like to download or get them all. Enjoy.
Right. This is very interesting. So while we're on house things, like the actual components and what's approved, let's talk a little bit about our friend, the VA appraiser. And I don't know if you ladies are aware, Alyssa's dad, who has been on the show, is a VA approved appraiser. He does a bajillion. I mean, is that his majority of his business?
It is a lot of his business. And the other funny thing is my grandpa was one of the first VA appraisers, and we don't know for sure if he was like the first in Louisiana, but his VA appraiser's license number was 1.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it might have been like back when this was really becoming a thing. He was one of the first appraisers that was on the VA.
He read the handbook.
My dad has the handbook.
Right. So tell us though, what are the appraisal challenges you see? Do all appraisers who do this seem to have good education on it? Is it just like anything else? Some appraisers are good, some are bad at this. Like, tell me about it.
Yeah, well, I'll say, I guess, as a lender, first of all, this is why it's important to work with a lender who really knows VA, because any lender can do a VA loan. You know what I mean? But not every single lender knows VA loans really, really well. And it's important because sometimes even appraisers get a little bit confused between FHA and VA standards, because FHA and VA, they're cousins, but man, they couldn't be further. They're like the cousins that sit on opposite ends of the table at Thanksgiving.
Okay.
And sometimes appraisers make mistakes. They're humans just like everybody else, but sometimes appraisers do make mistakes, and it's important for your lender to know how to override the appraiser or be able to push back and say, hey, that's an FHA guideline, that this is VA, remember?
Wow.
Yes. You would need to know them. So Sam, have you had that happen to you where you had to be like, no, that's not the actual rule?
Yes. Actually, for instance, there's a property listed right now for sale somewhere in New Hampshire or Vermont. I don't recall. I'm licensed in both states. So they created this list of all of these items that would not pass for government loan products, meaning FHA and VA and USDA. And I sent it to Liz because I had to have a little bit of a laugh. Supposedly, an appraiser created this list. An appraisal was never done on the property, but it was created with guidance for this agent to know why this would not work for these products. And, some of them were just super silly. One of them was missing siding. That's obviously not a safe component to have on a house. You want it sided. You don't want it to get wet. We deal with a lot of moisture here, not necessarily termites. We just deal with a lot of different various weathers. So, that's something that we can do, a repair after the fact, or we can convert them to a VA rehab loan and, they can hire a contractor after the fact and they can fix that, as well as other items.
Or request a waiver depending on the nature of that piece of siding that's missing. Is it just cosmetic or is it imperative to the structural soundness of the property?
And
is that even right that he could make a list to say all government loans? Like, wouldn't it be like, of this list, some of these are VA disqualifications, some of them are FHA?
Right.
It shouldn't have been allowed. And I definitely push back when I see agents saying things like this, like, not trying to be negative or like add fuel to the fire. I always come from a standpoint of trying to teach other agents, that's not the correct way. And I've had agents really actually love that. But then I've had the other side, I've been in the business for 20 years. I have been doing this forever. I know the best way. And I always just try to like put them back to Liz. Liz is, she's able to teach agents in New Hampshire about this and they can get CE credits. So I always just say, maybe you should chat with Liz and, get a different perspective on this and not just hearing it from me, some young agent who's new to this.
Okay. Well, perfect. While we're on agents who have pushback, a lot of listing agents, when you wanted to submit a VA buy or, offer, are just immediately shut down, or they're going to tell their sellers, you're getting 3 offers. They're all the same. Well, one's VA. Don't do that one. How do you handle that? Like, how do you handle that objection? Is there something that we can do to help support our, veteran buyers who want to use that loan and still be competitive?
So I actually use your email templates. I've been using them since day one.
Perfect.
And the offer email template that I use, when I'm putting in like the purchase price, I always say using a whatever loan product, in a VA loan. In the next line down, I add, please remember that Tidewater is an option using a VA loan where we can compete against the appraisal and multiple times. So some agents have really loved that. Other agents basically were like, that's kind of rude for you to put. But the thing is that email and everything that I'm putting there goes to the seller. And if the seller doesn't know what Tidewater is, guess what? They're going to Google it.
Can you tell us about Tidewater?
Yeah. So Tidewater, another kind of cool feature about the VA loan is that you have one, but you have 2 opportunities in the house in the event that the house doesn't appraise, right? So the first thing that happens when a house is not appraising, the appraiser goes out to the property, can't find the value, goes back home, sitting there on the MLS, can't find the value of the house. What the appraiser does is say, and then what they do is they notify the lender right away. And from that moment, the clock starts ticking. The lender has 48 hours to respond to the Tidewater initiative. It's called Tidewater, not because of the rising ocean levels, but it's because of the Tidewater area in Virginia where this particular protocol was, tested?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it was in the Tidewater area of Virginia. So thus the name Tidewater. So basically what we do then, what a lender does is I reach out to the real estate agent because I don't have access to the MLS like a real estate agent does. But what we have to do is we have to provide 3 comparable sales that support the sale price. I'll say, Sam, the appraiser called Tidewater. Can you help me out? We need comps to support such and such sale price. And what Sam's going to do, and sometimes this is, it's not necessarily whose job is it, right? It doesn't specifically say in the handbook whose job it is. It's just that 3 comps need to be provided. I find that real estate agents are the best ones equipped for this because I don't write CMAs all day like you guys do. But what happens is we get that back, we send it off to the appraiser, and then the appraiser will then at that point issue value. Sometimes there's a sale that's happened that maybe the appraiser isn't aware of, that a real estate agent knows of. So we can get that over to the appraiser as more relevant data. Sometimes the appraiser doesn't realize what type of house it is or things like that. But anyway, so we get the Tidewater done. Say Tidewater doesn't come in at value. We then at that point have a second avenue of recourse, which we can cut the appraiser right out of the picture and take the report and escalate it straight to the Department of Veterans Affairs and say, hey, we're contesting this value. The veteran writes an email or a letter, just says, hey, I'm the veteran. I would like to do a reconsider of value. for this property located at such and such at this price. And then what we do as the lender is we submit that to the VA for reconsider of value, in which the VA can actually override the appraiser and give additional value if they feel that the appraiser has not given value substantially to certain things.
How long of a process is that to hear back from the VA on overriding the appraisal?
So it can be anywhere from 3 to 7 days.
Okay.
It depends on turn times at the VA, but I've had them come back in as little as 3 days. I've had them come back in as long as 7.
And what does the letter need to say? What is the veteran saying to the VA?
Basically, that they disagree with the sale. Basically, they're contesting the appraised value that the appraiser has come up with, and they want the VA to reconsider for a value of such and such.
Does the veteran also provide the data from the realtor? Like, did they have to submit the facts like we did to the appraiser?
Yep. And what the lender should do, the lender should take this letter, they should take the comps, and then they should take the appraisal report and then send it to their appraisal management department or however their company is structured, which then would go and submit it directly to the regional loan center for reconsider of value.
I've never experienced that.
No, me neither. Well, that brings me to another question on the timing, though. So I know a lot of times, too, I think the complaint is that they're like, oh, well, this is a VA loan. They have such a long time period to get that appraisal done. Like, tell me about that. Is it really
Is it different?
Do they
than
actually
regular?
take longer? I mean, it's different, right?
So last year, according to the Department of Veterans Affairs, VA loans took 2 days longer than conventional loans to close. 2 days.
I mean, this is not a lot.
No, but I would also like to mention that VA loans closed at a higher success rate than conventional loans did last year, by almost 10%.
Wow.
Yes. So, sometimes the juice is worth the squeeze is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, with the VA too, what's kind of cool is you can actually Google it yourself as well. If you want to, for your specific market that you're in, you can actually Google VA mandated appraisal turn times. In New Hampshire and Vermont, it's 10 business days that the VA says that you have to get the report back and submitted. So 10 days. So,
usually it's a lot quicker, honestly. I mean, I had an appraisal on one in Vermont that it came back in 2 days from her visiting the site. And I'm going through Tidewater with it right now. And, we also just submitted the reconsideration of value. So we're waiting on that. And it did, delay closing for another week. But the thing is, we'd rather have this happen than the deal fall apart and start from square one.
Yeah, I'd much rather do a week-long extension than have to start over. Was it a big appraisal gap?
Nope. So, and honestly, it is at the price point we were listed at, but there's concessions. So they have to take that into consideration. Mm-hmm. So I was able to find comps in this particular one. The problem was the appraiser actually used comps older than 12 months. Because we live in a very rural area.
It's hard to find a comp.
Mm-hmm. It is. And, some of these properties, I live in a town that is 10 minutes from the border of Vermont. So, when we're comping things, it's not always super easy because maybe there's not a lot of sales or, we're expanding our search into Vermont or into New Hampshire. And that's a situation where this one is. We're expanding the search into New Hampshire because there are no comps in Vermont.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned also earlier the termite certificate. So we do in Louisiana have termite struggles. So they are important here to have termite inspections. I always try to keep them out of my purchase agreements when I'm doing conventional loans and anything else that doesn't absolutely require it, just so we can have it for ourselves, but the lender doesn't need to get muddied in those waters. I have found the termite certificates were harder to get when it was a raised pier and beam house. It was hard to get the termite company to check the box like all clear because they have to fill it with all these disclaimers about, well, what we can see is clear, but it's a raised home, so they could really be anywhere. And sometimes that could kill the deal when I couldn't just get the termite guy to write that it was good. Like, I'm like, this is what I need. And he's like, I can't do it. Like, what have y'all had issues there with termite certificates?
Well, they don't have a termite
But is it still required for the VA loan?
Because it's required here. We have to have it for a VA loan, and the seller has to pay for it. So that's the other thing. Normally in our market, the buyer, is that not true? Because I would love to hear if I'm...
Yes. Tell us about this.
True. That's not true. Oh my gosh.
The seller does not have to pay for a termite certificate?
The seller does not have to pay for a termite certificate if the veteran's not being charged a 1% origination fee. If the veteran is being charged a 1% origination fee, basically what that lender is doing is saying, forget it. I'm just going to charge them 1% of that loan amount, which, as you guys know, that could be $1,000 based off of a $100,000 purchase price, or the lender could say, I'm going to charge $3,000 to originate this $300,000 loan. That's like, I don't like that personally as a lender. But if they're not being charged a 1% origination fee, the veteran can pay for their own pest inspection. It's been in the VA handbook for years. They put out a new circular about it last year because people are still getting confused about it. But the veteran absolutely can. And the way that you determine whether or not the veteran can pay for it is get a copy of that loan estimate. Look at page 2. It's the very first section. I believe it's section A. And it'll say right there, it'll say origination fee 1%.
So if the seller is being charged a 1% origination fee, then they cannot pay for the termite certificate.
Correct.
But if they are not being charged a 1% origination fee, they have the option to pay for the certificate themselves.
Correct.
But it's always required.
It is, so there is actually a map that's available on the Department of Veterans Affairs. Down where you are, it's not really going to matter. Up where we are, there's a certain county, Grafton and Coos and Carroll County. I guess it's too cold for termites there, but that's the cutoff. If you're originating a loan in those counties, you don't need the pest inspection. But in southern New Hampshire, where I live, you do need one on every.
Where do you find that map? I just want to see it.
It's on the VA's website. So you should be able to Google VA termite map.
And it goes by county. It's county specific.
And I know this isn't like VA specific, but is there certain lenders? Is it like the 1% origination fee? Is that most lenders, some lenders, local or big banks always charge it? Like, is there sort of a stigma to the 1%?
I mean, I personally wouldn't want to work with a lender who's going to manipulate their origination fees depending on how much the loan amount is. If I was a veteran, you know what I mean? Like, I would rather pay $950, and know that I'm paying the same $950 as a conventional loan, for an origination fee, and then, whatever other fees the lender has, rather than just being charged a flat 1%. Can you imagine if you're buying a $700,000 house and being charged 1% origination? That is so incredibly unfair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, before we... Oh, yeah, go ahead, Sam, go.
No, that's why it's really important when you're in this process, and it's for any loan products, not just for VA, but it's always so smart to try to use a local lender, because the local lender also has access to different programs, such as where we are, Vermont and New Hampshire Housing, where, if we are working with a lower price point pre-approval, they may not have the funds to be able to pay their closing costs, where those programs would potentially help. So the other thing on that too is these other like online big box lenders, they don't know the area. They don't know the area at all. They're not, you're not able to call them, when there's an emergency, you're calling a call center and the call center is connecting you with whoever's available, and you have to refresh their memory on what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Okay, my last appraisal question. FHA appraisal stays with the house, right, for a certain amount of time. If it didn't work out, the appraisal was low, then, sometimes you'll find that buyer tries to strong arm the seller, like, well, you're going to be stuck with this one anyway. Is it the same for a VA appraisal? It does not?
No.
Like if a new VA buyer came back, like that deal falls through for whatever reason and has gotten through appraisal already. If a new VA buyer comes the next day, you're going to get a whole new appraisal.
Absolutely. That report on VA, that report stays with the veteran on that particular property. So say the deal falls apart and we're in a slower market, right? We're back in a market where it takes 3 months to sell a house, okay? Say the first time around that doesn't work out for that veteran. Maybe they need to come up with gift funds. Maybe they lost their job a week before closing and they come back a month later once the dust has settled and they want to buy that same house. They're going to use that same appraisal from before. Now, if this veteran walks away for whatever reason and a new veteran comes in to buy that house, the new veteran is going to get a new appraisal. The appraisal sticks with the veteran on the property.
Got it. Okay.
Yes, and when it comes to VA appraisals too, I know we kind of touched on this, but every appraiser is kind of different. I've had an appraisal on an 1800 schoolhouse and went with flying colors. There may have been a little bit of peeling paint, but they didn't, say anything about it. But the next one, I sold an old Sears home that came in on a train years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, it's a beautiful house. That appraiser nitpicked chipping paint on the lattice. So we had to go through and paint. And I did that. I went there with my 3-year-old and we painted that day.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all up to the appraiser. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not always fair, but it is what it is.
When it has to go back to underwriting for something, every lender different in how long that takes, or does everybody have to go back to like a VA underwriter that all the VA files go to? So in order to be a VA underwriter, now I'm not an underwriter, but I do know that there are certain standards and certain time requirements that an underwriter has to have in order to be able to underwrite VA loans. I believe it's 5 years, maybe 7. Don't quote me. Like I said, I don't know. I've never thought about climbing the underwriter, ladder of success. But there are, it usually will go back to the same underwriter that's been underwriting the file. Most lenders, I can only speak to how my company works, but for me, I get one underwriter at the beginning, and that underwriter is going to ride all the way to me, is going to ride all the way to the closing table with me. Okay.
Yeah.
This was, can we get CE for this interview?
I know. I still, there's more.
Can you just mail us our certificate? We've learned a lot.
I've learned so much. My head is like swimming.
My notes are not they're so all over the place.
What are there some things that appraisers tend to frequently flag or that you would expect to be flagged? Kind of tell me about a house. I'm going to show a VA buyer homes. What do I need to be on the lookout for that is important, that is in the book?
So something that comes up where we are in our market, right? We have the oldest housing stock in the country up here in New England. You guys are probably close to second, because we're on the original 13 colony kind of section of the country. And so for us, a lot of our houses are old. And for that reason, a lot of them have the original cedar or wood siding that has to be repainted every 5 to 7 years. So for us, peeling paint is something that does come up pretty often. A really easy remedy for that is to talk with the lender that the buyer is working with, whether they do a VA renovation program or if they'll be willing to do an escrow holdback for paint. It's a really great way. You can come in right with your offer saying, hey, I know your house has chipping paint. Our buyers are ready to go for a VA renovation on this. We'll close on time and the buyers will repaint the house after closing to satisfy the VA. Another thing that we get a lot is the GFI outlets in the kitchen and bathrooms if it's close to a water source. That's a really easy fix on a weekend. It's also an easy fix too sometimes for the veteran to do. The VA does allow a veteran to self-certify repairs and even sometimes do their own repairs. So we had a client a couple months ago, there was no GFI outlets in the kitchen or the bathroom. The veteran, part of his service was actually working on electricals. So we said to the VA, well, hey, he's got experience doing electrical work. Can he do the repairs himself? He did that. We just got a copy of the receipt and the veteran took pictures of the different outlets. We didn't have to send the appraiser back out. The veteran self-certified that the work was done. But those are usually the most common ones that I see. I don't know about you, Sam.
Yeah, that's pretty much the ones that I run into is the peeling paint and the GFCI handrails.
I was going to say I had a handrail issue recently.
But the thing is, I had a conventional loan where I had to send my fiance, who's a handyman, and he installed a handrail because unfortunately the seller was a doctor and he was in another part of the country and he just couldn't do it or find anyone because we also have a shortage of any sort of contractor, electrician, plumber. So we're able to do that. But the conventional loan gave me more issues than the VA loan.
I didn't even know we had a VA rehab loan.
That was on my starred area. They just breezed right over that. So tell us about that.
So it's 100% financing renovation loan. If you've ever done a conventional renovation loan or a FHA 203K, very similar process. You know, we get the bids from the contractors, we calculate how much they need in reserves, structure the loan to include the acquisition cost plus the cost of the renovation. So say it's going to cost $200 to buy it, $20,000 to paint the house. We're going to do the loan for $220 plus whatever reserves or finance costs associated with the renovation. And then we're going to close the loan. Seller gets their check on the closing day that they're supposed to. And then after closing, after the keys are exchanged, then the work all gets done.
Is it still kind of in the weeds with getting estimates? Like it has to be certain contractors and things have to be approved. Like it's still sort of a tedious, lengthy process, right?
I wouldn't say any more than any type of other loan program. Generally they don't want to see family members doing it. If you're like, oh yeah, my Uncle Tom, he knows how to fix stuff. Generally that's not somebody that we want to have on these types of projects. Not me personally. I mean, I trust your Uncle Tom, but it's the bank's money at the end of the day. You
right.
know what I mean? Like it's right. It's their say. But any type of financing is going to want to see, insurance. They're going to want to see, that the person has references and, they're not just going to run off with the 30% initial disbursement.
And they have to be, I guess if it's a new construction, they have to be a VA approved contractor. So if you're, I sold a brand new construction condo in Southern New Hampshire and this man ended up selling to every veteran he could find. He did not fill it with anyone else. He absolutely loved the fact he was putting veterans in a home, but he had to become VA approved.
Okay, last question.
You're really on your last question?
No, probably
we have
not.
So many questions.
It just brought up a new question. Can VAs do all condos or they still have to be like warranted?
So we do have to apply for every single condo to be approved. We got to make sure you can Google VA approved condos and then just go to the Department of Veterans Affairs and you can search. Super easy. The database is free for everybody, so that way you guys can see when your clients are looking. Now there is a waiver process. So say your client is trying to buy in a condo complex that was previously denied by the Department of Veterans Affairs. Say that it was for like a reason like something like legal, like right of first refusal, or some sort of a limitation to, whether or not they could do short-term rentals, something legal, right? Not necessarily in relation to budgets or special assessments. The veteran can actually write to the Department of Veterans Affairs and ask for a waiver. For them to allow them to buy that condo. It's a new process. It just came out within the last year. So a lot of people don't know about it. And there's not necessarily something out that's officially written about how to do it just yet. But it is in effect. I have used it before. So, it is something that's kind of cool to know.
Did it work?
Yeah. Yep, because there was a right of first refusal in the paperwork for that particular condo association, and so the Department of Veterans Affairs was like, yeah, no, it's fine, we'll just do a waiver for it.
And they sound like they're easy to work with. Is the Department of Veterans Affairs easy to work with?
I'm skeptical.
I have them on speed dial. I call them all the time. Anytime I have a question or anytime Sam has a weird question, because she has the weirdest questions. She's
out there in the field dealing with the weirdness that is real estate.
Tell me a weird question. I want to hear one.
I know we put them on the spot.
No, that's okay. So up here, we have a lot of Class 6 roads. We have a lot of town unmaintained roads. So I was told that this property wouldn't go VA because it didn't have a road maintenance agreement with the other parties, the other homes on the road. That's actually not the case. You do not have to have anything written. The veteran can actually just, sign off on it saying, hey, you know what, I'll take care of it. Or,
I understand.
I understand.
I understand the road's not going to be plowed or maintained. Like, that's fine with me. That sort of a letter. New Hampshire has.
As long as they know. They know.
Yep.
As long as they know.
Yep. And as long as the state has like a statute, I believe is the way that it's written. So New Hampshire, we have a statute for that because we just have so many darn dirt roads here in New Hampshire and Vermont. So that would be something to look into with your state. But again, it's right in the 26-7 under private roads.
It's right there in the handbook.
Right there.
It's right there in the book. Okay.
You just do the find button on your computer and you can type in, okay, dug well. And it takes you right to it. Like, hey,
In the
this is
book.
fine.
Wow. I thought this was going to be more boring.
I did too. Not gonna lie. I was like, oh good, we're interviewing
I
Leos
am
today.
absolutely fascinated. Okay, but let's talk about property type. Mobile home is okay. Like, is there any particular property type that is an issue?
So VA, fun fact about VA, okay? It is the only loan program that will allow you to finance a mobile home that's been moved once before.
Oh.
Oh,
It is the only loan program that allows that. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Now it does have to fit those same kind of HUD standards, right? It has to have the HUD plate, has to be built after 1976, has to be permanently affixed to the foundation so they can't roll it off in the middle of the night when we foreclose on it. God forbid someday. But it has to meet those sorts of criteria. But that is, they're financial.
Allowed.
Yes, and I actually have a mobile home. I'm on the listing side. We accepted a VA loan because my seller is actually a disabled veteran that I sold a house to, and he really wanted to sell to a veteran, and it doesn't have a slab under it. It is a dirt foundation, but it has tie down. So as long as it's affixed to the ground, it is absolutely fine.
Whoa.
Okay, that's interesting.
So you don't need a slab with VA. That's an FHA guideline. Don't FHA my VA,
You don't.
please.
That's what it sounds like. Like, don't get your. So FHA is more difficult, honestly, from what I'm getting out of this, right?
Yes.
Property-wise, I would say yes. Credit qualifying, they're probably about the same. FHA has their own caveats. I don't want to.
You're right. We're not. That's fine. We're not talking about that. But okay, tell me about the VA credit requirements. What's the debt to income? What's the credit requirements? Give us a kind of overview.
This is going to be fun. Okay, so there is no minimum credit score on a VA loan. That's set by a lender. So you could talk to a lender who maybe has a 660 as their cutoff for a VA loan.
Whoa.
And the veteran's going to be told they can't buy a house. And the veteran's going to be like, I can't buy a house. And you're like, okay, well, you need to talk to somebody else because the VA does not have a minimum credit score requirement. Lenders do.
Okay.
Like for me, the lowest I go down is 580. But I know I have colleagues in other parts of the country that will go down to 550, 520.
Okay.
There is no debt to income ratio cap on a VA loan either. That's another thing that's set by a lender. It's another lender overlay. They go by residual income if you want to get technical. Residual income is how much money is left in real dollars and cents after their paycheck, taxes, Medicare, house maintenance costs, childcare costs, liabilities, and the mortage. So
She just knew that. She just knew all those off the top of her head.
Yeah, she knew all those off the top of her head.
Yeah.
She does these classes all the time. And honestly, people are just like you guys at how you're reacting. They're like, wow, what are you talking about? That's so cool.
It's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
I mean, but I will say, let's go high level. This is sad. It truly is sad that the industry is filled with agents and brokers and maybe even lenders who act like it's difficult, who would turn a VA buyer away from getting a VA loan or tell them they're not competitive enough to get a house. I mean, you're right. We should be taking more time to learn this and be able to serve those people who serve their country in order to get into a home. It's just,
well, just like we get frustrated with realtors acting unprofessionally, I'm sure Liz gets frustrated with lenders who say, I do VA loans, and then they make a big mess of them, and it makes us think that they're harder because this particular buyer got a VA loan from someone that actually doesn't know the handbook and doesn't know the product and do them enough to know the ins and outs of how to get through it smoothly and quickly. You need a lender that specializes in this.
Yes.
Exactly. Or at least has done one or two in the past year. I mean, for me, it's like, it's like a restaurant, right? You know what I mean? If you go to a restaurant, just because they serve something doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best. I don't know if no offense to Applebee's, but I don't know if I would get sushi at Applebee's. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Yes.
They got those sizzling plates that are like way better, you know? So
Yeah.
Right. Don't get the sushi.
That's funny.
Oh my
And
goodness.
my big goal out of doing all of this in my lifetime is that it should almost be a requirement at your license renewal that you have to take these classes on these loan products. So you're not forgetting. So you're not into this 20 years later and, dogging a VA loan because, you heard something from someone 15 years ago.
yeah.
Right.
It's like difficult because veteran status is not a protected class, right? But veteran status is the one thing that makes this program exclusive. And when you have an exclusive program out there in the marketplace, you're going to have people that, don't understand how it works. And then, like you said, you have one deal that goes south because you worked with, Joe Schmo, who's never written a VA loan in the past 5 years, mess up everything. And now everybody has a sour taste because he didn't know that the appraiser made a mistake. He didn't know that this wasn't required. He didn't know, that there was no debt to income ratio. He didn't know to fight that, you only need, 12 months worth of overtime income with the right substantiating document. Like he didn't know how to fight for the VA loan because he just doesn't do that. And then
He doesn't have the VA on speed dial.
Yeah, he didn't have the VA on speed dial.
And it's the same way for lenders though too. I feel like real estate agents should know because at the end of the day, you guys are the gatekeepers to all offers, right? You guys are the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
To all ownership. But us as lenders, I feel like to originate a VA loan, you should have to take some sort of specialized class because it is a special product. This isn't just something you throw on the menu like chicken tenders or mac and cheese. This is something that's super important, like sushi.
Yeah.
Super important, like sushi.
Super.
I have a question for Sam, and then we're going to wrap up, I guess, because we could probably do this for a
We
while.
need to. This is long.
Sam, let's say you're representing the buyer and you present it to a listing agent an offer where maybe they're a little I don't know, I don't really want to deal with a VA. I mean, do you pull at their heartstrings? Do you remind them that you're helping a veteran? How do you put that out there? I feel like it's important probably to be like, hey, they served your country. You need to help them get into this house. I mean, if all other terms are the same, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The big thing that I do when I submit the offer, and everyone should do it with every offer, call the listing agent, go over it with them. Make sure they understand the loan product because even if it's another loan product, they may not know it. They may have never even done that. And for instance, I did have another agent who has only done cash deals in the last 12 months because that is unfortunately the market that we're in. We are in a very fast-paced market. Houses are only on the market for 7 to 10 days. Sorry. And so I always just let them know, this is a VA loan. If you have any questions, I try to always have my buyers kind of work with Liz, or I have a couple others that are still good at VA loans. So we're not just, pinpointing Liz as the only person that can do them. And I fight for them. I fight for them tooth and nail. And I did have one, the seller was a veteran. I explained it to the listing agent. She had never done a VA loan in her entire career. And he accepted it, and she is now calling Liz all the time with questions because her son's a veteran.
She's a believer.
I love that. And you're right, though. I've had sellers who were veterans that were happy to receive, actually more excited to take an offer from a veteran. So there's a whole group of people out there who want to support that little facet of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Wow.
There are tons of resources for real estate agents to become, military relocation professionals and a lot of different accreditations that way real estate agents can learn. An organization that I'm part of, Veteran Mortgage Advisor, we're there's a lot of us in the country. There's only 2 of us in New Hampshire, but I'm sure that there's some down where you are that are out there teaching these sorts of classes. There's different accreditations that real estate agents can learn. I mean, even sometimes just looking at the course manual for your real estate board you might find out that there's somebody out there teaching VA classes. But that's the best thing that I can do and suggest would be, just education is the way we change the stigma.
So
That's good. I will say, and I feel so proud about this right now, in our Hustle Humbly community, we have a military referral spreadsheet. So we have a list of every agents who are serving in areas that have a lot of veterans or near a base or that are more military community. So we definitely want to keep supporting that group and making sure that they can find each other. So if you're not in the community, y'all should join if you are serving a military area, because we have a whole list of people where you can send them when they move around. Amazing. All right. Are there any other things that we didn't hit that you feel like are super important for us to know and for the listeners to know before we wrap up?
I think I hit everything.
Okay, good.
I feel like I spilled so much. I don't know.
Yeah, that was great.
We really got a
That
lot.
was great.
This is like a re-listen though, because I'm going to be like, oh, I got to listen again and again to catch it all. Okay, friends, did you guys bring a toast? You're both welcome to each toast someone. This is our first time having 2 guests, so 2 toasts if we need.
Yeah, so I'm toasting my mentor. So because I've only been in the business for 2.5 years, I started with a small mom and pop, and I just switched over to Keller Williams. And when I was here, there was an amazing woman, Shannon Casey. She does an incredible amount of business, but she always answers your call, no matter what time of night it is, no matter what's happening. And I really have to shout out to her for everything that I have learned over the last 2 years.
That's
Love
awesome.
it. Okay, well, cheers to Shannon. And Liz, are you going to toast somebody?
Yeah, I'd like to toast to my boss, Jason Zilm. He's the other veteran mortgage advisor in the state of New Hampshire. I mentioned that there was 2. The reason why he's my boss is because I wanted to work for him. And he and I share the same mission. He's an Army veteran. He actually served in Bosnia. And we both work really, really hard. We actually co-teach our CE classes all over the state together. And he's really been a huge motivator, a huge support structure for me writing my first curriculums for the New Hampshire Association of Realtors. And he's really helped me kind of realize my dream and really, really helped me get on this track to, being the VA authority here. That's my goal.
Awesome.
I love that. Okay, good. Okay, so cheers to Jason and Shannon. Thank you so much, Liz and Samantha. This was
So good.
so good. So important, though. Just a higher calling type of importance. So thank you so much for sharing with us and our listeners.
Thank you for having us. I never expected you guys to respond so quickly and be so excited.
And your email came at the right time, because we were like, we could do it right now.
Yeah,
and
for
it would be
Veterans
for
Day.
Veterans Day. So
and I was
that's
driving
perfect.
and I called Liz. I'm like, should we shoot our shot? And
I'm
she's
like,
like, absolutely.
yeah.
Why not?
Yes,
Why not?
We're so glad that you did, especially because you're a listener and so you know what the show is about. We're just so glad and thankful for both of you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Y'all are smart.
So smart.
So smart. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. If you'll do me a little housekeeping favor and don't turn off your computer until it says it's done processing, because it will take an extra couple of minutes after we stop. You can navigate away, but just leave the computer open.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful day.
Bye, guys.
Okay, bye, friends.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Hustle Humbly podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, please go to ratethispodcast.com/hustlehumbly and leave us a review, or like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications.
If you have an episode topic or someone you'd like to toast on the show, please email us at team@hustlehumblypodcast.com.
Find us on social media at Hustle Humbly Podcast. Don't forget to find all the free resources at hustlehumblypodcast.com/resources.
See you next week.